Hi guys, welcome back to Binge Watch Britney. So in today's episode, we are going to be covering season 4 of the Vampire Diaries. So I'm a little bit worried to be doing this episode just because I actually lost all of my notes for season 4, and so I had to go back and do a lot of refreshing via different recap articles and stuff like that to recall like the little things that happened throughout season 4. And so I was really annoyed that I couldn't find my notes. I don't know what happened. I don't know if I deleted them or whatever the case was. And so it took me a lot of prep work in order to prepare my notes for this video. And so I do want to go ahead and say that, like I said in the last video, I'm not going to be covering the ins and outs, like the very little specific things that happen in season 4, but I am going to try and give you guys a high level overview of what happens in season 4. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get into the rest of the episode. Alrighty, so starting with our 5 key points of the season. So for our first point, we have a new vampire hunter in town. So Connor is this vampire hunter, and he is one of the 5 who are meant to hunt vampires. And so we have this really interesting thing happening where Jeremy is the only one who can see his tattoos, and the tattoo, as you kill more vampires, you are able to complete this map, and it tells you where the cure is basically and where kind of like Silas is, since Silas has the cure. And so we also have these moments where Jeremy becomes the new vampire hunter and he starts thinking constantly of killing Elena, which is very weird because this is she's not his biological sister, but like she's his cousin or whatever because they don't have the same parents. And so it's really weird that he's thinking this way about Elena, considering the relationship that they have. And so this leads to Elena moving out of her house and she moves into the Salvatore mansion. And obviously, this is going to cause some friction because her and Stefan are on the outs, and then her and Damon are, developing their relationship or will develop their relationship throughout the course of season 4. And then we also have Matt moving into her house to kind of just keep an eye on Jeremy and kind of help him work through that transition because as we'll see, Klaus, once he knows that Jeremy has this ability, he's kind of forcing him to continue killing vampires so that they can get to the cure because he, at some point, is worried that they're going to kill him with the cure. They're going to use it on him, and he doesn't want that to happen. So if he gets to it first, he can prevent all of that. And so we really see how this impacts the crew this season. We also learned that Connor was hired by Professor Shane, and this is someone that Bonnie is working with to develop her magic skills. And so he ends up happening is he introduces her to a dangerous form of magic called expression. This is not something that she should be messing with, and we kind of see all of those warning signs throughout the season. And I think at some points we have Grams coming to her and saying, "Hey, you need to leave this alone. You don't need to mess with this," or that there are consequences for you doing this type of magic and that sort of thing. Also, I want to talk about how we learn more about the 5 through the originals. So obviously with Klaus and his family being the original vampires, they know most of the vampire history and more so than anyone else. And so they have actually interacted with the original, the 5, I guess, and we learned that Becca was dating a guy named Alexander and she wanted to marry him, have a family life, whatever, with him. We have this moment where I think Klaus or Elijah are kind of taunting her about this and saying, he wouldn't be with you if he knew who you really were, what you really were, that sort of thing. And so she's really having to deal with wanting this relationship and knowing that this guy doesn't really want to be with her because he doesn't know the truth about her. And so I think we have this moment where that Alexander guy is killed and then he has this sword that is very important, and then she later on in the season reveals that when I guess she discovered that Alexander was dead, whatever, she ended up burying him with the sword. And the sword is very important because it allows you to decipher the map that is showing up on Jeremy. Also, I touched on this a little bit, but we know at this point that there is a cure for vampirism and everyone basically wants it. A lot of people also want it specifically for Elena. There's also the misconception that there's a cure for everyone, so anyone who wants to no longer be a vampire can take the cure. We later on learn that that is not the case. There's only one dose of the cure. And then we're also introduced to a new character. Her name is April. She becomes involved in this whole storyline this season because her father was a pastor in Mystic Falls. And at the beginning of the season, there was a explosion at a farm that I guess her family had. And there were 12 people who were sacrificed in that bomb explosion, whatever. And because of what her father did, this girl had a really hard time. He was being shunned by society, basically. And so, what we do learn is that in part of the plan to raise Silas, you need to have three specific massacres, I think of 12 people each, in order to be able to bring Silas back. And so, we learned that that explosion was just the first massacre to happen. Going into our second key point, the sire bond between Elena and Damon. So we have this moment where Elena ends up killing Connor because he threatened Jeremy. And so we see this scene where we have Connor in the Mystic Grill, and he's basically holding, I think, Jeremy captive, or he's trying to get to Jeremy, and he's threatening all of these people. And so the gang is trying to get into Mystic Grill and kind of like disarm him or whatever. And so we have this moment where I think Jeremy is able to get out through like a hole in the back wall, and he's basically underground in this cave or whatever. And I think Connor is chasing after him. And then we have this moment where Damon and Elena, they're in like some apartment. I think it's Alaric's apartment. Damon has been kind of pulled out of play somehow. I don't know if he's drugged or if he's been injured or whatever. And so it's kind of up to Elena to go and like save her brother or try to stop things from getting worse. And so he tells her that if she has the opportunity to kill Connor, to kill him. And so we have this moment where she's chasing him in the forest. She understands that he's not gonna stop going after Jeremy or whatever, and then she ends up killing him. And we see her kind of really coming to terms with what she did, and she's really upset by this. She is distraught, that sort of thing. What we learn later on is that she killed Connor because Damon told her to. I have mixed feelings on this because he said, well, if you get the opportunity, do this. So it's not like he explicitly said, kill him no matter what. And so I just have mixed feelings about this. And obviously, with there being a sire bond between Elena and Damon, we know that this is really influencing her behavior because whatever he says, she's kind of following or listening to and giving that more of a weight or more of a priority over what other people are telling her to do. We also have a new character introduced. Her name is Haley, and she's a friend of Tyler's, and we learned that he was basically with her when he was learning about how to be a werewolf, when he was trying to find his new tribe, that sort of thing. And so we have Caroline being really jealous over this because she basically knew nothing about Haley, and then we know that Klaus likes Caroline, and so he's really quick to like rub this in her face, rub it in Tyler's face, because this gives him the upper hand over Tyler because he really wants Caroline to be with him, and he thinks that he's a better man for her than Tyler. And so what we learn about Haley is that she's actually working on the side with Professor Shane to break the hybrids of the Shire bond. And so Klaus has a bunch of hybrids who are helping him to control Mystic Falls, that sort of thing. And Tyler and Haley are working together to break the hybrids of the Shire bond, and they actually lose one friend because of this. But then Haley is also working on the side with Shane to continue breaking the hybrids of the Shire bond, and they're doing this for a specific reason. And this leads to this moment where we have Tyler and Haley really trying to kind of get the hybrids on their side or whatever. And so this leads to a moment where another werewolf, I don't know if I can't recall if she's a hybrid or just a werewolf, but her name is Kimberly, and she really doesn't like the stance or the position that Tyler is taking up. And so she ends up challenging him, and she threatens Caroline, and they end up fighting basically for pack leader, and Tyler wins. And so we really see how the relationships and the positioning and the roles and stuff like that within that werewolf tribe is really shifting and changing constantly as they are trying to undermine Klaus. We also have this moment where Elena and Damon are intimate, and then we have Caroline and Stefan kind of realizing this too late. And so this is all due to the Shire bond. And so they have this moment where they realize that Elena, early in the season, she could not drink from blood bags. She could only drink from the vein, from the tap. And so they start to realize that this is because Damon said this. I think maybe her first day of being a vampire, he was like, she can't drink from blood bags, she needs human blood, that sort of thing. And so because he said that, every time she would try to drink from blood bags, she would get sick. And so they're starting to make this connection, and while they're making that connection, we see this scene of Damon and Elena hooking up, and this is going to be problematic because once Stefan learns that their relationship went this far, he feels like Damon is taking advantage of Elena, and that's not necessarily the case in my opinion, because Damon doesn't know that there's a sire bond between him and Elena. He's genuinely thinking that based on their past experiences that Elena truly wants him and that she does have these genuine romantic feelings for him. To make things a little bit worse, we do learn that Damon had a girl who was sired to him back in the day, and she was basically left counting all of the books in New Orleans. He told her to count all of the books, and she was literally doing that. And so it's very interesting that he wouldn't have connected whatever was happening between him and Elena back to that one situation that he had with that girl. But I also don't think that he would be thinking about that. He would just be really happy that Elena finally wants to be with him. He wouldn't be trying to question everything. And so I really hate that Stefan took this away from him and made him doubt that this was genuine because he can't get over the fact of losing Elena to Damon in this way. And one good thing that does come out of this conversation about Sirebond is that we learned from a witch in New Orleans that people can only be sired to another vampire if they already have human feelings for that person who sired them. And so obviously Elena already had feelings, romantic feelings for Damon, and so when she became a vampire through Damon's blood, that just intensified the feelings that she was having, but it didn't just create non-existent feelings in her. And then going back to the werewolves, and so I mentioned that they were basically trying to break the hybrids of their sire bond to Klaus, and Klaus finds this out and he ends up killing all of them and Tyler's mom. So when this happened, I think this is the second massacre because there's 12 hybrids who are killed, and then we see this scene where Klaus is basically torturing Tyler's mom. They're by the fountain and he basically drowns her, and he's, I think, basically blaming Tyler that this had to happen. He's letting her know why it's happening, and this creates a lot of friction between Klaus and Tyler. It was already building up between them, but this was like another line that's being crossed in the rivalry. And going on to the third point, so we have Professor Shane wanting to resurrect the dead via Silas. And so we learned that Professor Shane had a wife who died, and this is the person that he wants to resurrect once he's able to get Silas back living and up and running and that sort of thing. And so during this time frame, we have Bonnie's dad becoming the mayor of Mystic Falls. He implements a curfew, I think, and he's just really trying to change how things are done in Mystic Falls, but he doesn't realize that he's kind of messing up everything as well. And so we do see these moments where a lot of people die kind of like under his watch with the things that he's trying to implement. We also have a scene where April and Rebecca work together to trap Stefan, Caroline, and Elena in the library, and Rebecca uses this as an opportunity to force Elena to be honest about her feelings for Damon in front of Stefan, and obviously this is a huge blow to Stefan to hear that Elena truly loves Damon, like even though he thinks that all of this is because of his sire bond, he's really being forced to understand that there's nothing he can do about this situation. And then we do get this moment that, as a result of this conversation, Rebecca offers to wipe his memories of Elena so that he can kind of like forget about her. And he agrees to have her do this, but then she takes back her offer, and this is punishment for him for what he's done to her. And so I think that that is really just pushes him over the edge of kind of like understanding that he has to deal with the fact that Elena and Damon want to be together. And then we also have this moment where, because of his sire bond, Damon was told to stay away from Elena, but he didn't. And so this is just adding more and more things that are pissing Stefan off about Damon and Elena's relationship. We also have, during that library scene, Rebecca and Cole trying to kill Professor Shane after learning what he knows about Silas. And so we know that he's trying to find the location of Silas and the cure via the map that is showing up on Jeremy's arm or on Jeremy's body. And this is because of the cure. And so we have this moment where they are torturing Professor Shane. They are drowning him in like a sink or something in the back. And Bonnie was able to do a spell that links Professor Shane to April. And so this is a way that saves Professor Shane's life. They're able to go and find them and then kind of like rescue him, whatever. And so we'll just see a lot that's happening in connection to Professor Shane wanting to find Silas and bring him back to life. Going into the fourth key point, Klaus sends vampires after Jeremy. So I talked about this briefly, but at this point, Klaus knows that Jeremy is one of the five. His marks are growing, his tattoos are growing as he kills more vampires, and so he at this point is forcing Jeremy to kill as many vampires as it takes to complete the hunter's mark. And Damon is put in charge of kind of making sure all of this happens. And so we have this moment where Klaus, I think, has turned everyone in this bar into vampires, and they don't want to kill those people or something like that. And so they end up escaping, being chased through the woods, and they're able to hide out in this cabin that the vampires can't get into. And so then we have this scene being kind of intensified with Matt's life being threatened if Jeremy doesn't comply. And so this just adds another layer to all of this because Elena doesn't like that Damon is responsible for Jeremy in this way and is making him kill all of these people. He doesn't like that Jeremy is being put in this position, but this is something that he has to do in order to save Matt's life and kind of protect his friend group at the same time. And then we also have Stefan and Rebecca working together. They are looking for the headstone that I think is like another clue to where Silas is or something like that. And they're trying to force Professor Shane to work with them. And we have them kind of working together to do all of this on the side. And then we have this moment where Rebecca is asking Stefan if he's done with Elena, and then they end up being intimate. And so what happens is Klaus catches them the next day, and he's kind of able to use this against Stefan because he knows that Rebecca is the last person that Stefan should be sleeping with if he's all about Elena, because this is someone who's tried intentionally several times to make Elena's life worse. And then we also learn a little bit more about Silas through Cole. So Cole is one of Klaus's and Rebecca's brothers. I think there's 5 or 6 of them, I can't recall. And Cole reveals that he actually hunted a group that knew about Silas or whatever, and he is not willing to let them bring Silas back. And so he ends up compelling Damon to hunt Jeremy. And this is against Klaus's wishes because once Klaus finds out about this, I think Elena or somebody calls him and tells him to get Cole to back off, and Cole agrees, but then he backstabs Klaus basically, and he still compels Damon to hunt Jeremy. And so we have this moment where Jeremy is trying to escape Damon. Elena like puts herself in between them, and she is doing everything she can to get Damon to break the compulsion. And she's trying to do that by making him remember either her love for him or his love for her, and it's not enough. And it's only Stefan who is able to get him to stop hunting Jeremy. And this is very important because it speaks to how the brotherly bond between Stefan and Damon is stronger and it overpowers the love that each of the brothers have individually for Elena. And so I really like that because usually it's the other way around where the guy loves the girl so much that he sacrifices his other relationship. But I think they make it very clear that the brothers are more important to each other despite their feelings for the same girl. We also have this moment where Bonnie ends up questioning Professor Shane. He's been arrested and she's calling him a murder, that sort of thing. But then we also see like Bonnie's kind of the relationship kind of shifts because this is someone that Bonnie needs to help her control her expression that she is now experimenting with. Because he's basically set her up to be a ticking time bomb, and so if she doesn't have all of the knowledge that she needs to control the new like magic phone with her, she can be dangerous to the wrong people. And so this is where Professor Shane is able to leverage all of the knowledge and all of the information that he has and kind of prove his point about Bonnie not being controllable and not in control of her powers and a harm to society. And then going into the next thing that I want to talk about in relation to this fourth key point, we have Cole being killed, and this angers Klaus. And so what happened is, as we mentioned, Cole is not willing to allow Silas to come back, and so he really wants to kill Jeremy. And so I think he like breaks into the house or something like that, and they end up staking him. And then Rebecca is supposed to be staked as well, but they do not do this because of Stefan. So they're really trying to get rid of the people who are a threat to Elena and Jeremy at this point. And so Bonnie is able to trap Klaus in their living room, and he's at their house in their living room because he wants revenge for what they have done to Cole. And now going into my fifth key point, we have Jeremy dies and Elena turns off her humanity. So this was a very, very important scene in season 4. I do want to backtrack and cover some things that happened leading up to that point. So Shane leads them to find the cure, and he shares the story of a witch named Tessa. She was in love with basically Silas, and this is kind of where the doppelgangers of Stefan and Elena start. And then I think in the past season we learned about another doppelganger. And anyway, we learned that she basically was supposed to marry Silas, but he cheated on her, and as a result, she basically was responsible for the doppelgangers being created and not actually able to be together because she was jealous of the fact that he left her for another woman. We learned that 3 massacres are needed in order for the dead supernaturals to return to Earth, and we have obviously the explosion on the farm at the beginning, the hybrids being killed, and then Bonnie is responsible for the 3rd massacre, and it's when she is trying to do something, I think, for Professor Shane or Silas, and she ends up killing 12 witches unintentionally. I think she's trying to do something, but Caroline comes along and she killed one of the witches, and it triggers the rest of the 11 witches to be killed, completing the 3 massacres that they need in order to bring Silas and the other dead supernaturals back to Earth. And so we have this scene where they, as a gang, they get to the cure. They realize that there's only one dose of the cure, and leading up to this, I think we have the group kind of splitting off. I think we have Damon, who is maybe stuck with Rebecca, and he can't get down the hole to where they need to go to get to Silas's body. They're also being hunted by another vampire hunter at this point, who's trying to stop them from getting to the cure. And then we have Bonnie, Jeremy, and Professor Shane, who are lower down and closer to Silas's body. We have Professor Shane getting injured. He breaks his leg or something like that. And obviously his big thing is getting reconnected with his wife. And so when they're in that environment, they can hear people calling to them, and they think it's whoever they are thinking of or whoever they want to be reconnected with. And so for Professor Shane, he hears his wife calling out to him, and for Bonnie, she hears Graham's calling out to her. And this is a really important scene because we see Bonnie interacting with Graham, but Jeremy is someone who can see ghosts. He doesn't see Graham's interacting with Bonnie, so he knows that this Graham's person that Bonnie is interacting with is not real. It's actually Silas from his tomb or whatever, using his magic to manipulate people and think that other people are reaching out to them instead of him. And so what we have happening is that during this time, obviously Catherine is still out and about, and she somehow pretends to be Elena and nobody notices, and she's able to swoop in at the last minute, and they have gotten to Silas's body. I think they opened it, they know that there's one cure. Catherine is able to forced Silas to feed on Jeremy. So with Catherine forcing Silas to feed on Jeremy for his blood so that he can basically come back to life, he ends up being drained of most of his blood and then his neck is snapped. And so he dies and he's not able to be revived by the Gilbert ring. And once Elena finds this out, she's very distraught. And so we have this scene where she's in her house, she's really distraught over her brother dying, him not being able to come back to life. She's waiting on the ring to bring him back, but they're like, hey, he's dead, he's gone, he's not coming back, and she's unwilling to accept this. And we have this moment where she leaves Jeremy's bedroom, she goes downstairs, she again is really losing it. Everyone's trying to comfort her, nothing is working. We see this moment where Stefan goes to Damon and he says, hey, you need to comfort her, you're the only one who can do so. And so we see this moment where she's on the ground, she's crying, she's on her knees, and she's just hysterical. And he tells her to turn off her humanity, and everyone is appalled when he says this. And we have Elena being confused at first, but because of the Shire bond, she listens to him. And this is the worst thing that he can do at this moment because he understands that he can't really comfort her, and this is what he thinks is best for her, but he doesn't realize that this is just the wrong thing for someone like Elena to do. So we have this moment where after she turns off her humanity, Elena goes on a killing spree. She is openly feeding on cheerleaders at cheerleading competition. She makes Caroline fall, and then she even goes on a trip to New York with Damon, and he's telling the story about how Lexi was sent to him to help him turn his humanity back on, and he betrayed her, left her in the sunlight, that sort of thing. And so we see that she's able to trick him, and she ends up teaming up with Rebecca to find the cure. They know that Catherine has it. I can't recall if this happens before that scene with her and Rebecca teaming up or if it happens after, but basically we have this moment where Catherine is called in to scare some sense into Elena. So we see the scene where Damon and Stefan have Elena tied up to a chair. They're opening the blinds so that she's exposed to sunlight because they've taken off her daylight ring and they're not able to get through to her. So they call Catherine in. Catherine is meant to scare her and torment her, but Catherine actually lets her break free. And this is dangerous because she's able to get out of the house. And at this point, I think they have to up the ante. And I think we have Damon in front of Elena in the woods, and he snaps Matt's neck, and Elena is so distraught by this, and this is what causes her to turn her humanity back on, and she realizes that he has the daylight ring, or he has the Gilbert ring on, and so he's going to come back to life. And at this point is where Elena really starts to hate Catherine. Going back to Catherine, after she has taken the cure, we learn that she has compelled an entire town to pretend that she doesn't live there, and so they're there to try to find the cure. Rebecca is able to find it, and she takes it, much to the chagrin of Stefan and Damon, because obviously they want the cure for Elena. They obviously have mixed feelings about whether or not Elena should actually take it, but it's understood that the cure is meant for Elena. And so Rebecca finds it, she takes it, nothing happens, and they realize that it was a fake dose, so it's not really the cure. And we do see this moment where Rebecca is at some party, and Elijah now has the cure because when they were in that town to kind of find the cure, Elena, I think, is herself again or something like that. They are able to convince Elijah that Catherine is this awful person. She doesn't really love him. She's just using him. And so at this point, Elijah is the one with the cure. And so Rebecca comes to him, tells him that she really wants the cure. And for a day, she's not supposed to use any of her vampire tricks. And so there's this moment where I think someone needs to be healed and she can give them her blood, but she chooses not to because she wants to prove that she can live as a human. And so she successfully passes this test and she goes to Elijah to get the cure, but we actually find out that it was Silas pretending to be Rebecca, and so now he has the cure. and this just creates all kinds of chaos. We also had other moments happening throughout this portion of the season where Silas pretended to be different people in order to find the cure so that he could take it, because without the cure he couldn't exist in his natural state. He was like a really hideous looking monster, and so he needed the cure in order to be his true self, and his true self looks like Stefan. Also around this time we have Klaus going to New Orleans, and this is basically where we see the pilot episode for the originals. And so we have Klaus going back to his stomping grounds. He basically built New Orleans, as he said, and he is now interacting with his protege Marcel, and Marcel is kind of like welcoming him back, but he's also letting Klaus know that he's in charge and that sort of thing. We have the witches in New Orleans who are opposed to Marcel's rules. They don't want him in power, that sort of thing. And then we also learn that Haley is pregnant with Klaus's child, which shouldn't happen because he's a vampire, and so he denies like responsibility for this child, but this child actually ends up being really important, and we obviously learn more about that in the original. And then one more point that I want to touch on for key point number 5, we have Bonnie basically exchanging her life for Jeremy's in order to bring him back. And so we have this moment where nobody really realizes that she has sacrificed herself in this way. And then the last thing I want to talk about for key point 5 is that we have this moment where they are basically able to kind of defeat Silas, or so they think, and Stefan actually drives Silas's body, which is in like a coffin, and he dumps it into the lake, but we actually find out that it was the real Stefan who was dumped into the lake, not Silas. And so that is where season 4 ends. So to wrap up this episode, I'm really glad that I was able to get through this episode, but I'm sad that I wasn't able to cover the little things that I normally would have done in my season recaps. But obviously, going into season 5, we want to know how long is it going to take them to figure out what happened to Stefan, what's going to happen with Damon and Elena's relationship. When will they find out about Bonnie, that sort of thing, and how will Jeremy handle knowing that Bonnie basically gave her life for his, that sort of thing. I've obviously already watched season 5, so I kind of know how the rest of the season plays out, or the rest of the series plays out. And so, yeah, with all that being said, let's go ahead and end this episode, and I'll see you in the next one.